Parents spend a lot of time telling their children not to be afraid of the dark, but children know better. There are predators that have adapted special abilities that make them more dangerous in the dark. While it's true you're probably safe in your room, the dark has many things to be afraid of. That's what two children find out in tonight's stories.
They're real. Be careful. From Saucy Drago. It was August of 2017. My family and I were visiting my home country, Russia. We were going to go visit my grandma at her farm. My grandpa had passed away 2 years before this, and my grandma had gotten better from the incident, but we wanted to see her to bring her some joy in her life. Her farm had a barn, a stable, and a big plot of land for plants. There were also 2 buildings, a place where we cook and store food, and then a place where we sleep and usually hang out at. This farm is surrounded by woods. Now this country has quite a bit of wolves here. I've even seen a few come onto the property a couple of times. I've heard stories of werewolves too, and other creatures that live in Europe, but I never once imagined that they would be real. It was the day before we would go back home, and after hanging out with my family, I decided to go to bed, catch up on some videos on my phone. I laid there for a good hour watching videos until it was around 11 p.m. I decided to go to sleep. When I was just on the verge of passing out, I heard a loud shriek coming from the forest, followed by 2 shots. That was normal, as people would often put animals down out here. But this felt off. I waited until I heard the most disturbing howl erupt in the night's air. I lay there frozen while many thoughts ran through my head. Then slowly I began to hear something outside. At first I thought it was a stray cat, but it was much too heavy for that. My room has a door with a big glass pane in the middle, so I could see outside. And there I saw it. A creature covered in fur. It looked like a buff wolf, but stood much taller than me. It crouched down, and I could see its face. Its teeth were big and sharp, and they were covered in red stains. It looked like it had just eaten. The creepiest part were its eyes, which were human in shape and appearance. But there was an evilness to it. When it saw that I was there, it turned to leave, but not before turning to give me what appeared to be a demonic smile or snarl. Nothing like that since has ever chilled me so much. There are things out there we yet don't understand, so even if you're skeptic, it's best to be cautious and careful when you're outdoors. There are things lurking in the forests and the wild that will leave you defenseless and in shock.
Late Night Run-In with a Wendigo. Submitted by Anonymous. This happened to me about a year ago. I was going for a walk and it was late, and I had nothing else to do. I was about a mile away from my house and I was walking on a path in a field far from the main road. It must have been 2 in the morning, but that wasn't a problem, as my parents trusted that I would return home responsibly. Anyway, as I was walking past a tree line, I heard something strange. It sounded like static, like from an old radio. That's the only thing I could compare it to. I was rather frightened by this, but I decided to keep walking, when all of a sudden, I heard a child's voice. "Help!" I stopped short. I looked at the tree line, frozen, and debating what to do. I then stuck one foot out to where the voice came from. Again, I heard the voice repeating what it had just said. "Help me!" This time, however, I felt a bit uneasy. The voice sounded so much similar to the first time I had heard it, as if someone had just repeated a recording. Also, it had a bit of static sound to it, and I can't explain it exactly. I called out hesitantly, "Hello?" But there was no reply. My voice was shaky from fear, because I did not know what to think of this voice. But then, soon after, it finally spoke again, this time in something that resembled my voice. "Hello?" It sounded like me, but off. It was the same tone, same inflection, except there was the same static noise behind it. It said it again, same exact tone from the first time. I backed up a bit now, terrified after what I just heard. I turned and I began to walk away in a fast pace. That's when I heard a branch snap behind me, and instantly I stopped. I looked back and saw a deer, of all things. It was looking at me from the tree line. I was confused by this. Was it just a deer that I heard? I thought to myself, but I threw this idea away pretty quickly because of how stupid it sounded. There simply wasn't many explanations. But I ignored the deer and I started to walk away again, feeling creeped out, but not as creeped out as before. Maybe I really had just misheard the calls of a deer. So I went on my way again. I walked for not even a minute, and then I heard something behind me once more. I quickly turned to see the same deer standing on the path. Now that it was out in the open, and what moonlight there was shown onto it, I saw it very clearly now. I saw very obviously that whatever this was not a deer. It did have the head of a deer though, but the body looked like a human slumped over on all fours. The ribs were slightly showing, as if it had been attacked. It took me a second to realize just how big it was. If it were a person, they would have to be huge. I stood there frozen, petrified at the sight of something that couldn't be normal or natural or even real for that matter. And I thought it was huge before it stood up, because as it got up on its hind legs, I saw how big it truly was. The thing towered over me at over 7 feet tall. It stood perfectly like a human would, and I tried to think of the situation logically. My assumption was that this was a tall person trying to scare people, that they were just in a suit or something. But the head was too real, eyelids blinking over dead-looking eyes. I stared at this thing for what felt like forever, and I had no idea what to do. I finally decided to take a step back, but as I did, the creature took a step forward without even making a sound. The fact that it could move so quietly, it was horrifying. I wondered how long I had been watched by this thing and never even knew it. I was frozen again, scared to even make a noise, and then suddenly the thing said to me, "Hello?" Exactly the way it had said before. I was so scared by then, so afraid for my life. I was crying and shivering. I was thinking to myself, how could this thing speak? Then I did something I didn't mean to do, something I think my body forced me to do out of fear. I asked the creature, "What are you?" It was silent for a moment. I watched in suspense as the creature blinked one eye on the left, then the eye on the right, before finally making another sound. "What are you?" Again, it was what I said, except off. I could feel little rivers of tears flowing down my face. I thought I was going to die. There was no way this creature would let me live. I wanted to run or something, but my body simply would not allow me. So I stayed in that same position for what seemed like hours. Then finally, for no reason, the creature walked away, back into the tree line, each step making no noise. This was terrifying to witness, something so big, walking on 2 feet like a person, disappearing out of sight. As soon as I could see it no longer, I ran as fast as I could quickly down the path back home. I was so sure that I'd get home no problem, but I was wrong. I heard a branch break, and I started sprinting harder, not knowing what was going to happen to me. I started to see the main road, and my house was finally in sight, but it was very far away still. Then, in the woods right next to me, I heard the most deafening, disturbing scream. It seemed to come from above me, as if the thing was climbing and jumping through the trees, keeping pace with me with ease. When I got onto the road and got a few hundred feet from my house, all the noises suddenly stopped. I looked back over my shoulder, and I saw it standing there in the middle of the road, just staring at me, right before I turned to continue running. I heard it loudly say, "Hello," again in my voice. But after that, it never followed me, and thankfully that was the last time I ever saw it, the last time I even heard it, and honestly, I feel lucky to be alive.
Wow, those stories were wild! If you want to see more of the wildest and most fun horror animation on YouTube, check out my channel, Super Horror Show. So later on that night, the little girl told her dad what she saw. Well, he grabbed his gun and immediately ran outside. And there it was, the Wendigo, standing there over 7 feet tall. The girl's dad wasted no time. He shot the Wendigo and called animal control. The Wendigo is fine now, but by the time animal control got there, he was hanging on for dear life. Ha! Get it? Dear life?